You are holding the silver basin, the one that catches what falls. Your hands do not shake. They cannot shake, because she is watching you in the mirror's reflection, and a queen's handmaiden must be steady when beauty demands blood. The mixture in your palm is warm, white lead ground with vinegar until it becomes paste, thick as cream, cold as marble. You have prepared this same concoction every morning for 3 years, and still, the smell makes your stomach turn. Vinegar, mercury, something else you cannot name, something that smells like dying flowers and burnt bone. She does not flinch when you apply the first stroke across her forehead. The paste hisses against her skin, actually hisses, like water on hot iron, and you watch the flesh beneath turn white, whiter than snow, whiter than death. Her eyes close, not in pain, never in pain, in resignation. You thought royalty meant luxury, silk and gold and endless comfort. But here, in this chamber where dawn light filters through mercury-backed glass, you have learned the truth that history books will never tell. Beauty was not a gift for queens. Beauty was a war, and they were always, always the casualties. Her skin begins to peel at the edges where yesterday's application meets today's. Small flakes, like ash from a dying fire. You brush them away with a boar hair brush, and she does not move. Queens do not move. They become beautiful, or they become nothing. The queen does not scream. She never screams. Her face is the canvas upon which an empire paints its dreams. Her throne demands perfection, and perfection, you have learned, is always paid for in flesh. If you believe history's dark truths deserve to be witnessed, if you want to understand the price our ancestors paid for the faces they wore to survive, subscribe to this channel and drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from. Let's uncover together the cost of perfection and discover why beauty, for those who ruled the world, was never about vanity. It was about staying alive. A queen's mirror was her battlefield. Her powder, her armor, her rouge, the war paint that would determine whether kingdoms rose or fell with the morning light. You must understand this. In the palaces of Europe, from the frost-bitten courts of Russia to the sun-drenched chambers of Spain, a monarch's appearance was never personal. It was political currency of the highest order. When Queen Elizabeth I painted her face into a mask of white perfection, she was not indulging in feminine vanity. She was crafting a weapon. When Marie Antoinette layered powder thick enough to stop a blade, she was building fortress walls from cosmetics and prayer. A queen who looked tired was a queen who looked weak. A queen who looked weak became a target for revolution, for invasion, for the blade that waits in palace corridors when empires grow hungry for change. Her skin was parchment upon which treaties were written. Her cheekbones were the architecture of diplomacy. Her lips, painted blood red with mercury and crushed beetles, signed death warrants with every smile. The mathematics was simple and brutal. Beauty equals legitimacy equals survival. Ugliness meant uselessness. Age meant obsolescence. A single wrinkle could topple a dynasty. A gray hair could start a war. So they bled to be believed. They poisoned themselves to be powerful. They carved away pieces of their humanity with silver knives and called it sovereignty. In the morning, they would wake and begin again the daily ritual of transformation. From woman to symbol, from flesh to marble, from human being to living statue of state. Their mirrors reflected not faces, but the weight of nations. Every line they painted, every powder they applied, every drop of mercury they absorbed through pores that had forgotten how to breathe. All of it was the price of wearing a crown. Beauty was not their luxury. Beauty was their job. And like all royal duties, it was performed until death, regardless of the cost to the one who served. The most beautiful queens in history were often the most poisoned. The most radiant faces belonged to the most tortured souls. They glowed not with health, but with the slow burn of chemicals, eating them alive from the inside out. And still, they painted. And still, they powdered. And still, they smiled. Because a queen who was not beautiful was not a queen at all. The Venetian ceruse arrives each month in small wooden boxes, packed in silk that has already begun to yellow from the fumes. White lead ground into powder so fine it floats like fog when you breathe too close to the container. Mixed with vinegar until it forms a paste, the consistency of soft cheese, the color of fresh snow, the toxicity of liquid death. She sits perfectly still as you apply the first layer. The mixture is cold against her skin, cold and slightly gritty, like wet sand. It spreads in smooth strokes across her forehead, down her cheeks, across the bridge of her nose that was once dotted with freckles, but now will never see sunlight again. The lead paste covers everything: pores, scars, the natural flush of life beneath. It creates a face of perfect porcelain uniformity. Within minutes, the transformation begins. Her skin turns white, not the white of fresh linen or winter morning, but the white of bone, of skull, of things that have never lived. The paste dries and hardens until her face becomes a mask, beautiful and terrible and completely inhuman. This is the face that launched 1,000 ships of state. This is the face that appeared on coins, in portraits sent to foreign courts, in the nightmares of ambassadors who met her gaze across negotiating tables. Perfect, flawless, deadly. But you know what the portraits never show, what the poets never sing about, what the historians carefully omit from their careful chronicles. You know because you are there every morning when she removes yesterday's mask. You see what the white lead has done. Her lips crack first. Small fissures appear at the corners of her mouth, then spread like spider webs across the flesh. The lead seeps into these cracks, deeper, deeper, until her lips are more paint than skin. She cannot eat solid food anymore without the mask cracking. So she survives on broths and wines that she sips through a silver straw. Then her teeth begin to loosen. The mercury vapors from the lead have found their way into her jawbone, and the bone itself starts to soften like wet clay. When she smiles for court portraits, you can see the gaps where teeth have fallen out during the night, rolled across silk pillowcases like small white pearls. She learns to smile with her mouth closed. Her hair falls out in clumps. The lead paste, applied daily for years, has seeped through her scalp and poisoned the very roots. What remains is thin, brittle, the color of old straw. She wears elaborate wigs made from the hair of dead peasant girls, and sometimes, in the morning light, you can smell the decay from the poorly preserved hair mixing with the chemical perfume of her cosmetics. The most horrific change is her skin itself. Beneath the daily applications of white lead, her natural flesh has begun to die. It flakes away in sheets, like paint peeling from a sun-damaged wall. Sometimes entire patches come away on the removal cloth, leaving raw, weeping sores that must be covered with even more lead. Even thicker applications, until her face becomes an archaeological dig of poison layered upon poison. And yet, she continues. Every morning, you prepare the mixture. Every morning, she sits in perfect silence while you paint death across her features. Every morning, she transforms from dying woman into living symbol, from human being into porcelain goddess. The courtiers who see her in the throne room whisper about her ageless beauty, her perfect complexion, her skin like freshly fallen snow. They do not know that snow melts. They do not know that beneath the beautiful mask, she is disappearing, one lead-poisoned pore at a time. She dies at 37, though she looked 25 until the very end. Beautiful, flawless, a corpse that had been learning to die for years. Slowly, publicly, at her funeral, they had to use wires to hold her jaw shut. The bone had become too soft to support itself. But in the portraits that hung in the palace gallery, her face remained perfect forever, white as marble, smooth as silk, toxic as the love of empires for their own reflection. The mirror in her dressing chamber measures 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide, framed in silver that has tarnished black around the edges. But it is not the frame that will kill her. It is the reflection itself. Venetian glassmakers, masters of their deadly craft, had discovered the secret to perfect mirrors. A thin layer of liquid mercury painted across the back of clear glass. Mercury that gave reflections a clarity no polished metal could match. Mercury that made images so sharp they seemed more real than reality itself. Mercury that turned every glance into a slow side. She sits before this mirror for hours each day, studying her reflection as if it were a map to salvation. The morning toilette, the midday touch-up, the evening preparation for court. Each session, she breathes in invisible vapors that rise from the mercury backing, odorless and tasteless as they slip into her lungs with every breath. You stand behind her, watching her watch herself, and sometimes you wonder if she can see what you see in the reflection. The slight tremor in her hands that grows worse each month, the way her eyes have begun to dart and shift as if tracking invisible flies, the barely perceptible slur that has crept into her speech when she thinks no one important is listening. The mercury is claiming her mind first. Memory becomes unreliable. She forgets names of ambassadors she has known for years, repeats the same story 3 times in a single conversation, stares blankly when reminded of events that happened just last week. Her moods swing like a pendulum in a windstorm, rage to tears, to laughter, to silence, sometimes within the span of minutes. But her reflection remains beautiful. Mercury-backed glass shows her exactly what she wants to see. Smooth skin, bright eyes, the illusion of eternal youth. The same mercury that is dissolving her sanity is also creating the perfect image of royal beauty. She becomes addicted to her own reflection, spending longer and longer hours studying herself in the poisoned glass. The courtiers whisper about her strange behaviors, how she sometimes addresses empty chairs as if they contained visiting dignitaries, how she speaks to her reflection, having entire conversations with the woman in the mercury glass, how she weeps when clouds pass over the sun and dim the light that feeds her mirror gazing. You begin to understand that she is not looking at herself in the mirror. She is looking for herself. The mercury has stolen pieces of her mind, her personality, her essential self, and she sits before the glass each day hoping to find what she has lost. But the mirror only shows her surface. It cannot reflect back what has already been poisoned away. The tremors in her hands make it impossible for her to hold delicate objects. Teacups slip from her grasp and shatter on marble floors. Her signature on official documents becomes an illegible scrawl. When she tries to thread a needle, her fingers shake so violently that the servants must do even the simplest tasks for her. The mercury steals her words next. Mid-sentence, she will stop speaking, her mouth open, her eyes vacant, as if someone has blown out a candle inside her skull. Sometimes the words return after a moment. Sometimes they are gone for hours. Sometimes they come back wrong. French words tangled with German, childhood phrases mixed with royal proclamations, the sacred jumbled with the profane. But still she sits before the mirror. Still she studies her reflection with desperate intensity. Still she believes that the glass holds the secret to eternal beauty, never understanding that it is the glass itself that is stealing her life, breath by poison breath. On her final morning, you find her slumped forward against the mirror, her forehead pressed against the mercury-backed glass as if she were trying to step through into the reflected world where her image lives. The glass is fogged with her last breath, and for a moment, just a moment, you cannot tell where the woman ends and the reflection begins. They bury the mirror with her. No one else dares to look into glass that has drunk so deeply from royal blood. But sometimes, in the empty chamber, servants report seeing movement in the covered mirrors, a flash of white dress, the gesture of a hand arranging invisible hair, the ghost of a queen still searching for her own reflection in poisoned glass. The lime paste burns. It always burns, but she holds perfectly still as you spread the caustic mixture across her hairline, watching her face in the mirror for any sign that she might break, might cry out, might prove herself human after all. Fashion has decreed that beauty lives in the height of the forehead. The higher the hairline, the more angelic the face. The more angelic the face, the more divine the right to rule. And so, hair must be eliminated, not cut. Cutting leaves stubble, leaves evidence of what was removed. Hair must be destroyed at the root, burned away with chemistry and fire until it can never grow back. The mixture you prepare each week contains quicklime, cat urine aged until it turns ammonia sharp, and arsenic powder to ensure that nothing will ever grow in the scorched earth of her scalp. You mix it with a wooden spoon in a clay bowl, and the combination bubbles and hisses like a living thing. The smell alone makes your eyes water. Applied to skin, it will burn through flesh, down to the bone if left too long. But applied carefully, precisely, for exactly the right amount of time, it will kill hair follicles permanently while leaving the skin merely scarred, merely burned, merely ruined in ways that powder can conceal. She has been doing this for 12 years. 12 years of monthly applications, working the hairline back inch by painful inch until her forehead rises like a marble dome above her eyes. The burned skin is pink and shiny, stretched tight over her skull. But when powdered white, it creates the illusion of a vast, angelic brow that makes her look like a Renaissance painting of the Virgin Mary. The process takes 3 hours. First, you paint the lime mixture onto her hairline with a brush made from pig bristles. The mixture immediately begins to smoke and sizzle against her skin. Her breathing becomes shallow, controlled, but she does not move. Queens do not move. The burning goes deep. You can smell it. Flesh cooking, hair follicles dying, the acrid chemical reaction of lime eating through living tissue. After 15 minutes, you wipe away the first application with vinegar-soaked cloths. Her skin comes away with the mixture, leaving raw, weeping patches that will scab over and leave permanent scars. But the hair is gone, burned down to nothing, roots destroyed, the scalp left smooth and pink as a baby's skin. You apply the second layer of mixture to any spots where stubborn hairs survived the first burning. This time, she grips the arms of her chair until her knuckles go white, but still, she makes no sound. The most delicate work is around her eyebrows. Fashion demands that they be plucked not just thin, but eliminated entirely, leaving a smooth expanse from the eyes to the artificially heightened hairline. But plucking alone is not enough. The hairs grow back, casting shadows on the perfect marble surface of her face. So you use the tweezers dipped in boiling oil. Each hair must be grasped individually, pulled out by the root, and then the hot oil touched to the empty follicle to cauterize it permanently. She holds still as you work, hair by hair, follicle by follicle, building her beauty one small burn at a time. The pain is extraordinary. You can see it in the tears that leak from the corners of her eyes despite her iron control, in the way her jaw muscles clench until they bulge beneath her skin, in the careful, shallow breathing that keeps her from screaming. But pain, you have learned, is just another cosmetic. Like rouge or powder or perfume, it is something to be applied daily until the desired effect is achieved. When you are finished, her forehead stretches from her eyelashes to the crown of her head, a vast expanse of burned, scarred, powder-white skin that gives her the appearance of a classical statue. The courtiers will compose poems about her noble brow, her intellectual countenance, her divine appearance. They will never know that divinity smells like burning hair and feels like lime eating through flesh. The scars never fully heal. Each month, when you apply the lime paste to catch any new growth, you paint it over old burns, old wounds, old attempts at perfection. Her scalp becomes a map of self-inflicted torture, a calendar of pain written in scar tissue and dead follicles. Sometimes, late at night when the palace is quiet, you hear her weeping in her chambers. Not from sadness. Queens are not allowed sadness, but from the constant, burning pain that has become the background music of her existence. The lime continues to burn for hours after application, eating slowly through skin that never quite heals before the next treatment begins. But in the morning, she will powder her forehead white, paint her eyebrows back on with charcoal and lead, and present herself to court as the perfect embodiment of divine beauty. The burns will be hidden, the pain will be silent, the scars will be covered with cosmetics and lies. Beauty, you have learned, is not about looking good. Beauty is about looking like you've never suffered, even when suffering is all you do. The physician arrives with his leather case at precisely dawn, when the light is soft enough to hide what he is about to do. Inside the case, silver lancets sharp as needles, glass cups the size of wine goblets, and leeches that writhe in a jar of murky water like tiny black ribbons come to life. She lies perfectly still on the silk-covered table, her arms extended, her wrists turned upward to expose the blue veins that map the pathways of her mortality. Her face, already painted white with lead, looks corpse-like in the early morning light. Soon, it will look even more so. Blood makes beauty. The physician intones, selecting his sharpest blade. Fresh blood brings roses to winter cheeks. This is the theory, that by bleeding her regularly, the pale stagnation of royal blood will be refreshed, renewed, brought back to the vibrant flush of youth. That pain will somehow alchemize into beauty, suffering into radiance. The first cut is shallow, precise, made across the vein in her left wrist. Blood wells up immediately, dark, thick, the color of old wine. You hold the crystal bowl beneath her wrist to catch what falls, and you are surprised by how warm it is, how alive it seems as it pools in the bottom of the glass. But this is only the beginning. The physician places 12 leeches along her arms, her throat, behind her ears where the blood runs close to the surface. The creatures attach themselves with a sound like tiny kisses, then begin to feed. The theory extends beyond mere bloodletting. Controlled bleeding will bring natural color to her cheeks, they believe. Strategic wounds will create the flush of health that cosmetics can only imitate. She submits to this treatment twice weekly, leeches on Monday and Thursday, blade work on Tuesday and Friday, cupping on Wednesday to draw stagnant blood to the surface through suction and flame. The cupping is the most horrific. Glass cups are heated with flames until the air inside expands, then pressed against her skin and allowed to cool. As the air contracts, it creates a vacuum that pulls her flesh up into the cup, drawing blood to the surface until dark purple circles bloom across her back, her shoulders, her chest. When the cups are removed, her skin looks like she has been beaten with clubs. But the desired effect is achieved. For a few hours after each treatment, her skin does glow with something approaching natural color. The forced circulation of blood creates a temporary flush, a brief illusion of health and vitality. Court painters hurry to capture this fleeting beauty in portraits that will be sent to foreign kings as marriage negotiations. What the portraits cannot capture is the weakness that follows, the dizzy spells when she tries to stand after bleeding, the way her heart races from the simple effort of climbing stairs, the increasing pallor that settles deeper each week, despite the temporary flush that follows each treatment. You begin to measure her life not in years, but in bloodlettings. Each session takes a little more from her, leaves her a little emptier. Her body begins to eat itself to replace what is taken, muscle wasting away, bones becoming brittle, hair losing its luster as her system cannibalizes itself to keep her heart beating. The physician notices her deterioration but interprets it as proof that more bloodletting is needed. The corruption runs deep, he declares, selecting an even sharper blade. We must drain it all away to find the pure blood beneath. So the sessions become more frequent, more aggressive, more desperate. She begins to faint during the treatments. Her body, drained of the very substance that keeps it alive, simply shuts down. But even unconsciousness is interpreted as a positive sign. The bad humors are leaving her system, the physician explains as you fan her back to wakefulness. The leeches prefer her now. Weak blood is sweeter, they say, easier to draw. The creatures that once had to be coaxed to feed now attach themselves eagerly, bloating with her depleted life force until they look like small black balloons. Sometimes they burst from overfeeding, covering her skin with a mixture of her blood and their digestive juices. In her final weeks, the bloodletting sessions become a form of suicide by medicine. She is too weak to sit up, so the treatments are performed while she lies prone, the blood draining from her wrists into bowls placed on the floor. The sound it makes, drip, 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 becomes the rhythm of her dying. But even then, even as she drifts toward death by exsanguination, the physicians declare her complexion much improved. The extreme pallor created by blood loss is interpreted as fashionable whiteness. The hollow cheeks are called aristocratic. The sunken eyes are described as soulful. She dies beautiful, they say. She dies with perfect skin. She dies with the roses in her cheeks that the bloodletting was supposed to create, though the roses are made of rouge applied to a corpse, and the glow is the shine of fever, not health. At her funeral, they have to use wax to fill out her face. The bloodletting had left her so drained, so empty, that her features had collapsed inward, like a deflated balloon. But with skillful mortuary work, she looks radiant in her coffin, eternally youthful, perfectly beautiful, and completely, utterly dead. The perfume arrives from Constantinople in bottles no larger than a child's fist, sealed with wax and marked with symbols that look more like warnings than advertisements. Inside, ambergris scraped from the intestines of sperm whales, musk torn from the glands of dying deer, civet paste extracted from the anal sacs of African cats, all dissolved in spirits of wine mixed with compounds of arsenic and mercury. This is royal fragrance. This is the smell of empire distilled into liquid form. This is what queens wear when they want to leave an impression that lingers long after they have left the room. An impression that will, quite literally, never fade because the chemicals that create it do not break down, do not dissipate, do not ever truly leave the places where they have been applied. You uncork the bottle with hands that have learned to hold their breath. The smell that emerges is intoxicating and nauseating simultaneously. Sweet like flowers rotting in summer heat, musky like animal fur soaked in rain, sharp with the metallic tang of mercury, and the bitter almond scent of cyanide derivatives used to enhance the floral notes. She extends her wrists, and you apply 3 drops to each pulse point. The perfume burns slightly against her skin, a good sign, the perfumer assured you, evidence that the active ingredients are working their way into her bloodstream. Within minutes, her body heat begins to release the scent in waves that fill the chamber with invisible poison. The courtiers who come to pay their respects will leave with headaches they cannot explain, nausea they attribute to rich food, dizzy spells they blame on tight corsets. They do not realize they are being poisoned by proximity, that her very presence has become toxic, that beauty has transformed her into a walking chemical weapon. But the perfume is only the beginning of her morning transformation. The rouge arrives next, cinnabar ground into powder so fine it floats in the air like red dust. Cinnabar, mercury sulfide, beautiful in its bright scarlet color, deadly in its cumulative effect. You brush it across her cheeks with a rabbit hair brush, and immediately her complexion blooms with the appearance of perfect health. What the cinnabar actually does is flood her system with mercury, the same mercury that backs her mirrors, the same mercury that will eventually steal her memory, her motor control, her sanity. But for now, in this moment, it makes her cheeks glow as if she has been running through spring meadows instead of slowly dying in palace chambers. Her lips require vermilion, red mercuric sulfide, mixed with ground beetles and flower petals, creating a color so vivid it seems to pulse with its own heartbeat. You paint her lips carefully, knowing that every time she speaks, every time she eats, every time she touches her tongue to her lips in thought, she will ingest a little more of the poison that makes her beautiful. The coal that lines her eyes contains galena, lead sulfide that creates the perfect dark line to make her eyes appear larger, more luminous, more hypnotically beautiful. Lead that will seep through the delicate skin of her eyelids directly into her bloodstream, lead that will join the lead in her face powder, and the mercury in her rouge, and the arsenic in her perfume in a toxic symphony of royal beauty. Each cosmetic is a small death applied with precision. Each beauty treatment is a lesson in the chemistry of slow suicide. But the effect, when all the elements combine, is genuinely transformative. She becomes radiant, luminous, impossibly beautiful. She glows with an inner light that makes her appear almost supernatural. The tragic irony is that the glow is real. The chemicals that are killing her do create a kind of luminescence. Mercury makes her skin seem to shine from within. Lead gives her complexion an ethereal pallor. Arsenic adds a subtle flush to her cheeks that looks like the bloom of perfect health. She is dying, but she has never looked more alive. The perfume becomes her signature, her chemical fingerprint. Long after she leaves a room, traces of ambergris and mercury linger in the air. Her clothing retains the scent for months after she has worn it. The chairs she sits in, the books she touches, the letters she writes, everything becomes contaminated with the beautiful poison that surrounds her like an invisible cloud. Visitors to the palace begin to complain of strange symptoms after audiences with her. Ambassadors develop mysterious rashes. Courtiers suffer fainting spells. Children brought to meet her often vomit afterward, their small bodies unable to process even brief exposure to the toxic cloud that follows her everywhere. But she smells divine. She smells like heaven distilled into liquid form, like angels' tears mixed with flower petals and starlight. The scent is so intoxicating that people become addicted to her presence, craving another breath of her poisonous perfume even as it makes them ill. In her final months, when the accumulated toxins have begun to shut down her organs one by one, the perfume no longer masks the smell of her dying body. Instead, it mingles with the odor of internal decay to create something new, something uniquely horrific, the smell of beauty and death, braided together into a single, unforgettable fragrance. She dies, scented like a goddess and toxic as a viper. Even her corpse continues to emit the perfume, the chemicals so deeply absorbed into her tissues that embalmers have to work in shifts to avoid being overcome by the fumes. Her funeral is attended by mourners who weep tears that burn their cheeks, poisoned by the very air around her coffin. Her portrait travels faster than any army, strikes with more precision than any blade. In the gilded frame, her face becomes currency, legal tender in the international marketplace of royal marriages, diplomatic alliances, and dynastic survival. Every stroke of poisonous rouge, every layer of deadly powder, every chemical enhancement has been carefully calculated not for personal vanity, but for reasons of state. The marriage negotiations begin with her image. Paintings are commissioned and dispatched to foreign courts like beautiful spies, carrying intelligence about fertility, health, and genetic suitability wrapped in layers of idealized flesh tones. The potential bridegroom studies her painted face with the intensity of a general examining battle plans, looking for signs of weakness, disease, or insufficient beauty that might weaken his claim to power. Her blush, created by mercury and ground beetles, and the slow burn of chemical reactions beneath her skin, becomes a diplomatic statement about her reproductive potential. Rosy cheeks suggest fertility, suggest the ability to produce male heirs, suggest that her womb is as perfectly maintained as her complexion. The foreign prince's advisors spend hours analyzing the exact shade of pink in her painted cheeks, consulting with their own physicians about what her coloring might suggest about her monthly cycles, her likelihood of surviving childbirth, her capacity to breed a dynasty. The whiteness of her skin, achieved through lead poisoning and mercury vapor and arsenic-laced powders, communicates her noble breeding, her distance from common labor, her suitability to represent divine authority on earth. In a world where pale skin means wealth and dark skin means peasantry, her chemically induced pallor becomes proof of royal blood, evidence of her right to rule over those whose faces have been darkened by honest work under honest Sunday. But the politics go deeper than marriage markets. Her face, transformed by poisons into a mask of inhuman perfection, becomes the face of the nation itself. When her portrait appears on coins, when her image is reproduced in official documents, when artists paint her likeness into religious scenes as the Virgin Mary or various saints, they are not depicting a woman, they are depicting an idea. The idea of divine authority made flesh. The idea of perfection made manifest in royal blood. Her beauty treatments become acts of governance. Every morning when you apply the lead-based face paint, you are painting the face of the state. Every time she submits to bloodletting to maintain the flush in her cheeks, she is bleeding for the good of the realm. Every poison she absorbs through her skin is a sacrifice made to maintain the illusion of divine perfection that keeps her subjects believing in her right to rule over them. The courtiers who see her daily have learned to read the political messages encoded in her appearance. A slightly paler complexion might signal illness, weakness, vulnerability, information that could be sold to enemies or used to plan palace coups. A tremor in her lead-poisoned hands could suggest that the throne is ready to change occupants. The increasing frequency of her beauty treatments becomes a matter of national security. Foreign ambassadors are trained to study her face for intelligence about the stability of her reign. Does her makeup seem hastily applied, suggesting urgency or fear? Are there new lines around her eyes that might indicate stress about military defeats or economic problems? Has the quality of her cosmetics declined, suggesting that the royal treasury is running low? Her face becomes a mask that must never slip, never reveal the human being beneath, never acknowledge the pain that is eating her alive from the inside out. She is not allowed to look tired, regardless of how little sleep she gets. She is not allowed to look worried, regardless of what reports arrive from the battlefield. She is not allowed to look sick, regardless of how many organs the lead and mercury have begun to shut down. This is the ultimate horror of royal beauty. It becomes a form of governance that consumes the governor. Her face belongs not to her, but to the state. Her appearance is not personal expression, but public policy. Her beauty treatments are not self-care, but statecraft. And the woman beneath the painted mask becomes less and less relevant with each passing day, until she exists only as a surface, a facade, a beautiful lie painted over the rotting foundation of absolute power. You are packing away the rouge. The final time, though neither of you knows it yet. Your hands move through the familiar ritual. Silver brushes cleaned with spirits of wine, glass vials stoppered and sealed, the mirror covered with black silk cloth as if it were a coffin. But something feels different this morning. Final. Like the end of a story that has been telling itself for years, through poison and paint and the quiet violence of beauty. She sits motionless in her chair, hands folded in her lap, staring at her covered reflection as if she could still see herself in the shrouded glass. The lead paint on her face has begun to crack along her jawline, small fissures that reveal the gray, dying skin beneath. You pretend not to notice as you fold the bloodied cloths, as you measure out tomorrow's dose of mercury, as you prepare for a morning that will never come. I cannot remember, she says suddenly, her voice thin as winter air, what I looked like before. And you realize, with the sharp clarity that comes only in moments of absolute truth, that neither can you. The woman who began this ritual years ago, the young queen with freckled cheeks and brown hair and eyes that sparkled with something other than mercury poisoning, has been erased so completely that she might never have existed at all. The face in the portraits, the face that launched ships and toppled governments and brought kingdoms to their knees, was never really hers. It was created, layer by toxic layer, by the demands of empire and the cruel mathematics of power. The beautiful queen was always a fiction. The real woman suffocated slowly beneath the painted mask, dying by degrees as her true face was buried under lead and mercury and arsenic and lies. She became the most beautiful woman in the world by ceasing to be a woman at all, by transforming herself into a living portrait, a breathing statue.